The story of Tara Road really is the story of two women. Marilyn Vine, who is living in America with a very happy life, real good American good lifestyle with her son and her husband, and then her son is killed, and a terrible gloom and despair settles on her. She's not able to accept his death. She's determined she must go somewhere, and so that she can be away, somewhere that she can be alone and where she can think. By chance, by a series of chances, she has a telephone number in Ireland which brings her on to ring Rhea Lynch, whom we've already met, who is Rhea Lynch, is a lovely, warm Irish woman in a big, happy family in Ireland with two children. And the thing that is kind of ironic and sad is they're both having birthday parties. There'll be a birthday party in America and a birthday party in Dublin. And get in touch. But Rhea hears just after the birthday party that her husband is going to leave her for a much young woman who's already pregnant, and that her marriage, which she thinks is idyllic, is over. So what's happened is that the two women decide to exchange houses for the summer, each to try and or get over or change their lives, forget their woes or get over and change their lives. And it's what happens to each of them when they come to the other land. It's not a simple thing where the simple little Irish girl goes to a big noisy New York City. It's not like that. It's quite the reverse. She goes to a quiet, elegant New England home where she's lonely because she's not surrounded by friends as she was when she was in Dublin. And Marilyn, thinking she would go to Ireland for being full of peace and green fields and cottages and blue sky, finds herself in the middle of an extraordinary noisy and busy society where restaurant owners, flash neighbours, people are in and out of the house in Tara Road. And it isn't exactly what she wanted, but it does draw her out of herself. And it's what happens to these two women and as they live in the homes of the other women during the summer. And it comes to a solution which is it isn't an accidental solution. They both have to find their own happiness, because I'm a great believer in thinking that we have to make our own happiness in a sense in life. It sounds a little bit teacherish, but I was a teacher, so I suppose that's got something to do with it. But in fact, we do make our own success and happiness by trying to look out for our futures. And it's extraordinary, that we still believe that something is going to make us happy. If you're thin, you're happy. If you're rich, you're happy. Or if you're married, you're happy. But I've been through the world long enough to know a lot of thin, rich, married people are very unhappy. In fact, their happiness has to come from within. So I suppose that's the sort of slightly preachy thing in Tara Road. But mainly it's a story about how two women fared during one summer. Well, the reason that I wrote Tara Road was because I had an extraordinary experience once, which is quite ordinary in a way, because other people are doing it all the time, of exchanging homes. Now, my husband Gordon Snell and myself, we went to Australia, and we took somebody else's house, and we gave them our house in return, our house in London. Now, first of all, we had to tidy the house up like mad for them, because we wanted them to think we lived in great style, and we were very wondering what it was going to be like, because I'd never met these people before and they'd never met us. And when I went to their house in Australia, the first thing I began to feel desperately ashamed of was that we didn't have nearly enough beautiful, elegant classical music like they did. I was wishing that somebody could go back home and hide all my country and western tapes, which I thought were going to look very, very ugly compared to the beautiful symphonies and concertos that they had in their house. But I knew all their secrets, this couple, when we lived in their house, and they knew all ours. There's no disguising when you go to live in somebody else's house. I knew all about their neighbours. I knew whether they paid their bills in time. I knew whether they had good towels that they showed us, which were on the top of the airing cupboard, and bad towels underneath with bits of things torn on them. They knew all my secrets as well. Eventually, I said to them, I hope you don't mind, we're going to buy you a bottle opener and 6 wine glasses, because they didn't have any. And they said, not at all, we're going to buy you a big milk jug and 6 dessert bowls, which you don't seem to have in your house. But it was the most extraordinary bonding experience. And I thought, wouldn't that be the greatest thing to base a story on? But of course, there's no point in writing a story about one happy couple who left in exchange with another one. That would be the most boring story in the world. So I had to write about, if you like, a tragedy and about a problem, and have two women who had a great problem, and hoping that going to some different part of the world would sort out their problems. There was no magic cure to people's problems, but on the other hand, maybe being in a different surroundings can give you the sense of distance and context that you can maybe solve your own problems. I'm not a great one for doing research on anything because I believe in terms of writing, if you write about what you know about already and write what you're familiar with, then it comes easily to you and then you don't make mistakes and slip up. So I don't do much research really. And I do know America quite well. I've been going to the United States for quite a long time and often staying with people who lived in a university surroundings, who lived in a kind of campus life. A lot of our friends are teaching in American colleges and university. So I know vaguely what a lot of these university towns are like, and the people live in each other's pockets rather a lot, people from the faculty. So that was fairly easy to write. And I know what all the houses looked like in New England and the lovely white wood houses and board houses. And I suppose because of all the years going backwards and forwards, I know there's a slight difference in terms of speech and in terms of attitude of Irish women and American women. Well, I've been delighted with the whole casting for Tara Road. It's strange once you hand it over to somebody else to be your movie. It stops being your movie, and you have to take what they give because it's not I'm not financing the whole thing. It's somebody else's. But it's been delightful listening to the people that then looking at the people that they have chosen and seeing some of the rushes. One of the things that I was delighted with, I was delighted with all the characters. They seem to be almost exactly what I thought once I'd seen them perform. But Ruby Wax is one of my favourite comedians, and I always love her. Always turn her on the television because she's just that wonderfully bit too outrageous, which nobody else has got away with before. I've always admired and I always thought if ever there was a show on in London, that when I was in London, I'd go and see it. But to my amazement, she's been cast to play Carlotta, who was a kind of slightly ditzy, silly lady who was overexcited but good-hearted. And I'm dying to know what she does with it. The character of Marilyn Vine is an interesting one to write about because I do believe that there are people who are so in control of their lives that when something unspeakable happens, like the death of a child, that they could not actually cope with it, and that they break up in a way internally, which means they cannot grieve publicly. And that's what happened to Marilyn. She was so heartbroken that her beloved son was gone, that she couldn't talk, she couldn't accept sympathy, she couldn't try and face a future without him. And when she came to Ireland in the story to try and escape and to try and get her head together over everything, because she couldn't go off with her husband and pretend that everything was the same as always was. She couldn't go back with her husband to Hawaii and pretend that everything was always the way it was. So she came to Ireland hoping for new experiences. And by chance, as very often happens to all of us by chance, she just, through the words of a child, literally through the words of Ria's son, she hears something that suddenly, if you like, opens her heart to the grief. And she thinks to herself, well, of course, that's exactly right, because Ria's son says to her, I'm sure he's up in heaven now, terribly sorry that he's caused you all this upset, and very sorry that he's upset you all so much. And she sort of thinks, well, that's true in a way. That's exactly where he is. And suddenly she's able to talk about him. She's been refusing to talk about him all the time. And I think that kind of complexity is very much there. I'm very admiring of the way Andy MacDowell plays the part. If you just look at her face, she's very thoughtful and she's thinking the whole time. And you can see the thoughts on her face. You can just see it. I was watching her one day and she was worried about something in the story. She was worried. And you could just see her eyes narrow and broaden again as she was thinking it through, and then suddenly she gets up and leaves the table. And I think she's got a very, very expressive face, and I hope that people will also see the character of Marilyn that I meant through it. Well, I think Ria was a girl who grew up as a girl to keep the rules. She was good. She kept a good house for her husband because he had come from a kind of a house where there hadn't been much warmth or family life, and she thought, wrongly in this case, that she thought that Danny would love to have people fussing over him, the smell of cooking the whole time in the kitchen and people in and out. But really, that wasn't what Danny wanted. He wanted excitement and to move on. And his theory in life was, really, I suppose, why make one woman happy when you can make dozens delirious? And I think that she didn't know this. And I think there must be lots of people in the world who think that their marriage is happy, and it's not. And I once overheard a woman saying that she was divorced, and overheard it just at an airport saying she was divorced. She said, I thought we were happily married for 15 years, and my husband told me we'd been unhappily married. And I wondered about that, and I kept it in my mind for a long, long time. And I wondered, Was her husband telling the truth? You know, had they been unhappily married and this woman was a fool and she didn't see it? Or in fact, was her husband a complete liar? And was she... and I wondered, was her husband telling the truth? And had she been a complete fool and not seen all this? Or was her husband a liar and he was just found something newer and younger and fancier and more trophy-like? And so he was moving on and pretending it. And it was always there, filed away at the back of my head as something to write about. So I made Ria, in this story of Tara Road, I made Ria basically a decent girl who was trying to do the right thing and thought that her husband and 2 children and her extended group of friends and family were enough for them. And she didn't really realise that she had to put a bit more into life herself and get on with it. No one was going to come and rescue her. Well, when I was writing Danny, I made him a kind of a guy whom everybody wanted to talk to more. You know, there are loads of men that you have, you meet, and that they hold your hand for that little bit too long, and they look into your eyes for that little bit too long. It's absolutely marvellous when you can find it. And Danny was that kind of guy, not the guy to marry, but certainly a lovely guy to meet along the way. I've seen Ian Glenn before on television, and I didn't really realise until I saw him close up that he does have that kind of charm. And he doesn't make too much of a fuss of people, but when he's talking to one person, it makes it appear that there's no other person in the room, and that kind of thing is terribly seductive, and he catches that very well in Danny. We were hoping, Gordon and myself were both writers here. We've been married now for a long time, and we've never had any really big part in anything. Neither of us are actors. But we asked at the beginning, could we have a little tiny part? So we drank a martini in it. Now, at least I thought it was going to be a martini, but it was a glass of water with an olive in it. And it was 9:30 in the morning, so that seems reasonable enough. And we did that, and I was so pleased to be offered a martini by Stephen Ray, who's an actor that I have great admiration for, and I've met him 2 or 3 times. I never actually thought we'd be sitting there pretending to be people, not pretending to be people, we were people in a restaurant sipping a martini, and we were told not to speak aloud because it would cut across what the real people were saying, so we just mouthed things, you know, saying this is delicious and things like that. I think we did a pretty good performance, really, and I imagine that the critics will probably take quite a lot of notice of it.
Hey, fantastic. Thanks, Rosemary, for persuading her.
Oh, she didn't have to break my arm.
You will break yours, though, if the food's not good.
Food will be fine. Jennifer, 15.
Hi.
See you in 15.
Follow me, please.
You ready to order yet?
One of the most marvellous things that happened to me about books was that Oprah Winfrey decided to have Tara Road as her choice, as her book society. She has a book club choice. Now, you have no idea, and I have no idea, nobody had any idea how exciting this is in America because they have whole sections of bookstores which are just called Oprah's Choice, because Oprah is very much of the people. If she says it's going to be all right, everybody believes her. And they go out and there are hundreds and thousands and buy the book. And also I went over to Chicago. We went over to Chicago to meet her. And she's like the Queen of America. That's the only word to describe it. We were staying in a hotel where we were just ordinary people going in and out of the place, and nobody had the slightest interest in us out of town, no account folk, until Oprah's car came from us. And then suddenly we were people of great importance because we'd been invited to her studio, you see. It was a fascinating, very fascinating meeting her. She was delightful, she was warm, she was easygoing. She has the most incredible memory. There were a lot of people in the studio. I was killing myself trying to remember their names. And she, who does it every day, remembered every single name without any trouble at all. She was a very, very interesting woman talking to her. She talked about her life quite calmly to us. We had a lovely long lunch. A man set up a table for us. We had an Irish stew for lunch, and he had shamrocks and things on the table. It was a most ludicrous but marvellous meal. And we had great fun having a chat with her. One of the most interesting things that came out of that show was the debate in the audience about what they thought Tara Road was about. Now, in a sense, I thought the book was about 2 people who got strength from living in different environments and got the strength to go on. But everybody was terribly interested in one aspect of the book, which was the fact that secrets are kept. Marilyn finds out a secret about Ria, and Ria also finds out one about Marilyn, that about their lives. Do they tell these secrets when they come back, or do they not? That was really the big question that the audience argued about quite vehemently. And Oprah Winfrey's idea was that you must always tell everything. Like you'd tell your friend if your husband was cheating or whatever, you'd definitely tell. And her thinking on this was that the truth will set you free. Her thinking on this was that the truth would set you free. Well, now, I have a different kind of attitude to things because I often think the truth could drive you mad and make you worse than you were. And so, I'd be all for a bit of blurring things over myself rather than coming straight out and say, I think you ought to know. But it was most animated discussion. And if there's some point of that comes out of the story too, well, then I'd be still delighted to know that people would want to argue it. I don't know whether I'd ever do a house swap again. I think I would. I think I would if there was somewhere that I'd really love to go to again, somewhere that was far away in a foreign city. It's lovely to live in somebody else's house in a foreign city. I would do a house swap again, but I don't suppose anyone would let me in now that they know how nosy and inquisitive and poking around the place I am, looking in their medicine cupboards and reading the outsides of the invitations they get to things. And I don't suppose anyone would ever do a home swap with me anymore. But I do think it's a very, very good idea to do it. It's a wonderful way of seeing another city. I'd never met Gillis McKinnon, who's directed the film before. I've only met him twice. And he's an extraordinarily nice one. I've seen a lot of his movies, and some of them I've really loved. One of his movies, which was called Hideous Kinky, which was the beautiful one about the two little children who go to Morocco with their mother. It's the most touching movie. I never ever thought I'd get to meet the director of that. I love that. And he was very gentle, very lovely Scottish accent, and very nice, and he seemed very calm when I met him, very calm. And I would be so worried and fussed if I had to do what he had to do to make a big movie like that in not a huge amount of time. But he seemed to be perfectly calm about it all. And on the day we were on the set, I was interested in watching him. He had patience. He had patience that like you have never, ever known. He was the calmest man in the place. Over and over and over. They were all patient. Everybody was patient. The stars were patient. The extras were patient. The cameramen, the sound people, everybody was. They were just over and over again. But he was so calm. He never, ever lost his temper. He never shouted at anybody. And he just was very encouraging to people. So I think if you're going to be in this business of directing, because it's a very, very strange world, the movie world, I'm glad that I'm mainly just sitting at my laptop typing out stories for myself. I couldn't be dealing with all that kind of huge numbers of people. But if you're going to be in charge of maybe 100 people every day, as he would be on set, then I think you need to have a very long suit and patience. And he certainly has it, as well as completely, as well as and separate to his artistic talents, which are manifest. I am endlessly fascinated by people's lives, and I think everybody is the hero or heroine of his or her own life. And I could watch people forever. I'm never bored. I could sit in an airport or a railway station or a restaurant, and I could watch people forever, and I make up stories in my mind about what they're doing and what they're going home to. And I'm very, very, very interested in watching people the whole time. And I think Tara Road is a story of a whole lot of lives that come across each other in one summer, and people are hurt, and people are cured, and people grow up, or people don't grow up, and people are discovered, and people are healed. And I hope people will enjoy it.